it.
All right.
Yay!
We made it. We made it. Absolutely.
Nothing
So
like technical
I was going
difficulties.
to say, apologize for the soft launch that never happened. We had all sorts of problems, but we're here.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
here. So
We certainly are. Welcome, welcome.
yes, welcome
Thank
everybody.
you.
Um, so Jody, what do you
Ooh.
think about the Sarah Boone verdict?
Well, I think she has provided ample amount of content, really, at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Um, it, I was, I, I think I built it up in my head to what I thought would happen, and then I was disappointed with the Saints openings, and I'm like, is that all you've got? Really? Is that your case? And
Well,
then, yeah,
Well, I think sometimes, though, Jody, sometimes in a case like that where you have video evidence, that's all you need. And in this case, it was a situation where I think she was very, very unlikable, and I
yeah.
think her likability factor is what really, in my opinion, made this a quick verdict of guilty because
And it was quick.
well, it required the jury to feel sympathetic towards her, and they felt no sympathy. And again, that was the danger of what happened happening, which was the nearly 3 hours of inflammatory videos that were played for the
Yeah.
jury
Yep.
to conclude the state's case, and then they read in those text messages. It was damning. I mean, in my opinion, in terms of just making her not look at all like she was, a
Yep.
sympathetic character,
Well,
which is
anyone that was watching it with me, they know that I was not pro her, but I thought her defense was strong enough to get through that battered wife syndrome defense. I really did. I was shocked. I really was shocked with the
I,
verdict.
I was not as shocked
So,
because when I first started out the case, as I think as I told you in a subsequent live, I was like, well, there's issues with getting her in the suitcase
yeah,
and all of this stuff, and or how he got in the suitcase and all that stuff. But reality was, the um, state eliminated all of that, in my opinion, once it became clear that she kept him in the suitcase, and then you saw the videos
yeah,
perfectly leading up to. In other words, it was a perfect presentation in that sense that they were able to demonstrate to the jury that this was a continuing pattern between them,
and it
and
wasn't just
that it was a
one sided.
mutual abusive situation. And once you had the mutually abusive situation, then you got into, okay, at the moment, what was really going on here?
Yeah,
And I think the biggest hindrance for the defense was, um, the abuses, clearly it happened. But the
for sure.
question was, what was happening at that moment? And was this anger or was
Her
this
perception,
fear?
yes, yeah.
And based on those videos, it showed she was a very angry drunk. And she was an angry drunk who got this man in a suitcase. And then she made a terrible decision because she was drunk. She passed out. She did things. And this jury, again, like I said, the jury had no sympathy for her. And they locked
No,
her up, threw away the key. And she's,
yeah.
I'm sure, regretting this morning not having taken the plea that would have
Ooh,
ended this nightmare.
you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, so what impressed me the most, though, I think, was the fact the the defence's case with the battered spouse syndrome and the limited amount of time that he had to prepare for that. How I believe, looking at the research that I did and the components and criteria that needed to be met to reach um, that defense level, he met all of them
Mm-hmm.
and produced this defense in that 45 days or whatever it was. And then when the state came in with their expert witness in rebuttal and, she'd assessed Sarah 4 days before the trial, I'm like, you've had 5 years sitting on this. What did you not think to get her assessed at any point in that time?
Well, I think I mean, I think part of the issue I think that occurred in this case for Sarah Boone was her attorney. I was impressed with him to a degree, but I was not impressed with his ability to communicate with the jury or to communicate an issue clearly. And you saw that in arguments to the judge, where
Yep.
he's trying to read this entire law and he's not getting to his point. And when you have a jury up there, you got to get to the point. And the
Yep.
point in a criminal trial is always the burden is on the state. And what I didn't hear him clearly making clear to the jury was letting them understand how these cases work, that there is a burden on the defense, but the burden is, once the burden is met in the judge's eyes, and you know it's met when you get the instruction and they're able to argue to the jury battered spouse, now the burden shifts back to the state
Yeah.
and the burden is clear. Once the defense, that's why it becomes a very winnable case for the defense, or at least it should,
Mm,
because now the state is left having to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that
that's
battered
right.
woman syndrome was not the cause of this. And the burden is always on the state to prove that, not the defense. But in this case, when you listen to the defense, that didn't necessarily come through, and the state did a good job of making it like, well, Sarah Boone has the burden of convincing you. Well, she doesn't. She had the burden of simply raising a doubt as to whether or
Yeah.
not this was
Yep.
an intentional act with malicious intent. And that's where this thing came apart, in my opinion, for the defense. Was it was just not communicated well to the jury, and not to mention that she
Yeah.
was not a
And that defense
sympathetic.
wasn't even accepted until they established that overt act, which was why she had to get up onto the stand. So they couldn't even introduce any of the prior stuff with the DV and anything until she took the stand to lay that
Right,
foundation.
correct.
So they were on the back foot to start with.
Well, that's going to always be the
Yep.
case because the burden is on the state. But that's why it's clear. It's got to be, in my opinion, what David Owen should have stood up and said to the jury at the opening statements was, "Listen, um, the burden is on the state in this case. At the end of the day, we intend that we're going to show that we're going to make the case that this was a product of battered woman syndrome. This was a product of her
Yep.
long history
Yep.
of being of violence. But at the end of the day, we don't have to prove that that's what it was. We just have to show you that that there's doubt as to whether or not what
Yes.
happened at that moment in the suitcase.
Yes. Well,
And this
that
comes down to that moment. And what I'm saying is David Owens didn't do enough to crystallize that this was not, again, the state's like, well, the abuses doesn't come into. They did a better job of saying at that moment, what was she doing and what was she
Yep.
thinking?
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
what this case was all about. And that's where it was like, they really needed to have just honed right in and said, okay, at that moment, do you believe beyond a reasonable doubt that Sarah Boone decided I'm going to leave him in there and I have every intent to leave him in a suitcase and kill him? Or if you don't believe her intent was to kill, then you have two ways to go with this. You
Yeah.
could go to
Culpable
manslaughter, culpable homicide,
negligence.
reckless because it was a reckless act
Yep.
to leave him in the
Yep.
suitcase and fall asleep, or you could go to not guilty.
Yep.
But at that moment, it's about that moment. And then
They didn't
and
emphasize that enough.
understanding that moment. And then you say, okay, and this is why we're going backwards with this. Because in that moment, what I don't think he did is he did not remind the jury that in this moment, it is not about, and again, there's a police officer case right now, and that's going on in Ohio that I'm covering. So check it out now that Sarah Boone's over, everybody. And you should consider covering it too, Jody, because the defense in that says, listen, this is not about your perspective. This is about what the officer saw at the moment he discharged his firearm. The law says you must put yourself, and in fact, in Ashley Benefield's defense, her attorney in there argued this exact point to the jury in closing arguments. But it's about putting yourself not in your own mindset with your
No.
own life experiences. It's about
her
understanding her life experience up
Yes.
to that moment.
Yes.
And in that moment, understanding what she was processing.
Correct.
And she was intoxicated. And they said, well, she was intoxicated. Well, that's going to many would say that's going to like eliminate the noise in her brain. She's going to be
Or
acting
enhance that.
simply on her subconscious and she's going to be acting on, in the way I would have phrased it, is the totality of her experiences up until that moment is what was driving her. And if
Yes.
you believe she was being driven to kill him intentionally, then obviously you find her guilty. But if you believe that at that moment, when he's in the suitcase, in the hands coming out, okay, and she's put that testimony forth. So when the testimony comes forth, again, the burden is on the state to disprove that. She's put that as a defense. So if you believe that there's any chance that there's a reasonable chance that what she told you is true, and
That she's
based on the
got
fact that
some
you saw
imminent
all,
risk.
well, that you see all of the
Mhm.
stuff, you heard her again. David Owens, he touched on it, but to me, the smoking gun on that would have been the discussion she had with her brother. Now, he did bring that up. He said we started the case out, but he really didn't tie it in, because the significance of that was she was saying, it sounded like she was saying she might have been choked that day, but she was saying, tell him about you choking me.
That's
Tell
right. Yes, when he
and if
ran.
and if that had happened that day, if he had choked her in any way or whatever, that ties back in to her mindset at the time, because then in the video she's talking about the choking. She's
Yes,
talking when
and
he
that's
says
where
don't
I
breathe.
thought those intrusive thoughts were coming in, and that then backed up the story of the battered
Mhm.
spouse syndrome, and it put her in that mindset of being in imminent danger, and
Right, but that's where the defense,
they
when he
didn't.
was doing his closing, he did not tie it together well
No,
enough
they
for the
didn't
jury
convey
to
it.
say,
No.
okay, listen, this is all tied in. You have her,
Yes,
this is
yes,
about her mindset. And that's what I'm
part of
saying.
that
He
package.
needed to really direct that. Listen, your job in this case is to put yourself in the shoes of Sarah Boone. You leave
Yes,
your
yes,
thoughts, your stuff outside. You're walking in the footsteps. Everything we put on, we know there's bad stuff. We know they had a volatile relationship, but I want you to walk the path of Sarah Boone. And that's what we tried to do with you in this case. We put her
yep,
on the stand. We didn't shy away from this evidence. She documented a lot of things. You
yep,
get to walk that path up until
yep.
that moment she makes this decision.
She
So
didn't
now
conceal,
and you get
hide.
to decide. Right.
Yep, and
Exactly.
then you should have argued, you may not like her personality and the way that she acted and the way she's come across, but she's not on trial for that.
That's correct. That's correct.
So yeah, look, I
So,
think he did a great job for the time that he had and the limitations against him. I can't fault him. I think he did a fantastic job.
oh, I think he did too. I think he did too. Again, the time limitations are a huge thing, um, because it's in
And then you
my
added in, the stand your ground and the castle doctrine, and then it was okay. Well, she was that enhanced the self-defense claim,
Mhm,
and then it went further to say, well, okay, he was allowed to be there too, but then they introduced the court orders where she had against him, the personal protection orders, which then negated that. So it
mhm.
was almost like it was give a little bit, like two steps forward, one step back, and
Yep.
I was convinced that it was coming down to either manslaughter. Well, that's where I thought it was at, because I didn't think they'd created enough for the second degree murder charge. Like, I thought they'd created enough doubt,
Hmm.
basically, and I was
Hmm.
really shocked, really
Well,
shocked.
well, I agree with this comment here from Elizabeth. She says, I think by her
Yeah,
taunting him is why they went. I
yeah,
agree with you. I think that
yeah.
those videos, that three, almost 2.5 hours of videos, is when I watched that, I said she's in trouble, and this defense is in trouble, because when you watch that, it's like you're in you see like a buildup to where the way the state presented that, it was like this buildup, this simmering buildup. It almost was akin to what OJ's prosecutors were trying to do when Christopher Darden was talking about the fuse got lit, and it was building and it was
Yeah,
building and it was building until
yeah,
it just exploded on this night and she kills him. And that's kind of what you could see. The way they presented things is it
yeah,
looked like it was just this building of aggressive comments,
yeah,
of her talking down to him, of her berating him and hating him and getting tired of him and being ready to say, hey, you know what? I'm ready to get rid of you. And then of course, you don't even have to speculate on that because there it is, right in the phone records where she's telling his daughter, my life will be better when I get rid of George. Well, what the hell does that mean?
Can I just ask a question? Sorry.
Sure.
Do we have the ability on this software to do closed captioning? We've got a.
That's a YouTube thing, but there is no ability to do it natively inside the
So
software,
they have to
except
do it on
for.
their YouTube.
Well, we would need we would have to turn it on if we go into the studio, which when we're setting up our live, we can turn it on by putting the stream latency to normal, and then we can turn closed captions on.
This is why we were late this morning because we're trying to set up all these little
And
things that
then
you don't think of. And Christina, you can most certainly stream from the YouTube. I don't know how to do it from this software, as it's different to mine, which is why we were late. Because I'm still trying to get my head around it. But that's all right. We'll get there. We will definitely get there.
But yes, the closed captions we can set up. Now the only thing is they recommend when we do that, if we put normal latency, that would be normally like if we're watching a trial, we're not trying to speak ourselves because what it could do, it could throw our audio out of sync.
Yep.
So that's the downside. Now post YouTube will allow captioning afterwards, and we can add the EV Mux will actually give us the transcript that we can load into YouTube,
Yep.
but that'll all be done after the fact, not while we're live. So
You got a bit of lag there.
Yeah, there'll be some.
Oh, hello, Carson.
Yeah, he's up. He's saying good morning. Good morning. Yep. Yeah.
I can't believe how.
I know. So yeah. So I guess Jody.
All right. Well, can you explain to me, because we had a bit of a discussion on when I was streaming it, and I had a lot of difficulty understanding this post hoc ergo proctor. Is it? Can
Yes.
you
Post hoc
shed
ergo
some
proctor.
light on that and explain it to me, because I don't, and where it came into play in the case.
Sure. Well, sure. Yeah. The post hoc ergo proctor means it's a Latin term. After this, therefore, because of this, meaning it's a logical fallacy. It's basically it's the way that it's the way our human mind will see causation where it doesn't exist. In other words, we might have a rainstorm and then the sun comes out. And the idea here is that the sun didn't come out because it rained. It just came out because that was the next thing that happened. Yep. So in this case, the abuse preceded this event, but that does not mean that the abuse caused her to kill him, because it could have just been she was angry at him in that moment and just decided, I want to kill this guy because I'm sick of his bullshit. I'm sick of dealing with his not having a job. I'm sick of him being around me. The problem is the abuse is always something that's factoring into the mindset, in my opinion, but it doesn't mean at the moment she made the decision to leave him in the suitcase that was driven by abuse. It could have been driven because she was drunk and passed out and forgot him. It could have been that she didn't intend to leave him in there for long. And I think that's where this case kind of gets a little murky, is because when you're, and this is where the danger of the battered spouse syndrome comes in this case, right? In order to argue battered spouse, you have to say she intentionally left him in the suitcase. So you get away from the idea that says, well, I mistakenly left him in the suitcase because I was negligent and I was drunk. So you can't have both.
No, well, she's
now you could say that it was because
wasn't it?
Well, there is one, right? I mean, there is one thing that says, listen, we were playing hide and go seek, but here's where the problem comes in that took out the accidental. It was the fact that she admitted that she beat him with a baseball bat, and he had all these injuries that indicated. So, right, and once she tried to say it was an accident, remember? That was her first. That was her first thing to the police.
Yep.
So,
and then it was self-defense.
Well, look, let's really focus in on something here, right? Let's look at a world where Sarah Boone is at the scene and she says, I found my boyfriend in this suitcase. We were playing hide and go seek, and it was an accident. And then she
Yep.
shut up. And the police come up and they said, "Will you give a statement?" And she says, I'm going to get a lawyer, and then I'll come down and talk to you guys."
Yeah.
He's already dead,
Mistake
right?
number one.
If
No,
she gets a
two.
lawyer and she shuts up,
Hmm.
okay,
You think she could have got off if she
absolutely,
hadn't
110.
done those
She would.
statements?
She certainly would not have been charged as soon as she was.
Because she
Okay.
handed her phone straight over. She didn't remember that
Well,
she had taken those videos.
again, she wouldn't have. She would have never handed the phone over
Mm-hmm.
because she would have She would have just said, "Okay, now they may have gotten a search warrant for her phone,
But
but
that
why
would have,
would they need the phone, right? Why would they need? I mean,
yes,
they might have said, "Hey, we want to get all of that eventually,"
but that
but
takes time too.
the problem was she starts interacting with the police like they're a priest to give her penance for everything she did, and she starts
Because
confessing all, and she doesn't realize. Again, this is what David Owen said: she didn't
she tells
consult
it
with an attorney.
everything.
Well, because she believed, like everyone else, that she hadn't, I haven't done anything wrong, but she didn't understand that just because you think you didn't do anything wrong,
Mm-hmm.
just like the police were trying to explain to her, you keep saying it was an accident, but that doesn't make it not criminal. You keep saying you didn't mean it, but that doesn't make it not criminal. So
That's
she
where her
learned
ego got her.
a hard lesson that everyone should heed, which is you don't talk to the police because she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't talk to the
No self
police.
snitching.
If she doesn't talk to the police in this case, guess what? She isn't
They've
in
got
prison
nothing.
today. They
Yep.
got nothing. This thing is dead on arrival.
So, how
Um,
do you think they established the second degree murder charges at the start? With because you've got to meet intent, depraved mind, and willful disregard. Yeah, for human life.
the depraved
So,
mind was in the video. That was her saying you can't
yeah.
breathe. Oh, now you know that's the depraved mind, and then him begging and begging, and then when they got the medical examiner report and he had all of the injuries that he had, that was easy. I mean, that was easy because then
Um,
at least just from the standpoint of they were looking at this and saying, okay, um, she's um, you know. She's admitted to putting him in the suitcase. She's the only one at the apartment, and there's all these injuries.
yep.
Now, again, if they wouldn't have had the cell phone evidence, then they would have needed to speak with her to try to get her to admit
Mm-hmm.
what she did. And then again, this case she never gets convicted. She got convicted because of the cell phone evidence. If the cell phone evidence isn't there and she doesn't give a statement to the police, she's walking away. Um,
So, where does the intent come into that?
well,
Because intent
remember,
can
yeah,
be a second, can't it?
intent can be inferred,
Okay.
and it can be inferred based on the injuries. It can be inferred based on what they saw in that video.
Mm-hmm.
So intent can be inferred. It does not have to be clearly stated. It can be inferred by other evidence. So the intent would come out to say, well, she's talking to him and saying, yeah, this is you. It is just like when you used to choke me. Just like I said, just because those things at that moment, if there's not a threat to her at that moment, from the
Yep.
police's perspective, he's in a suitcase. How do you have a threat at that moment? Okay. Now she creates the threat by claiming that there was an overt act of the hand
Yep.
coming out of the suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, what I'm telling you is the police do not, again, it's a very low standard to get an arrest warrant, but for them, they just say he's in a suitcase, he's beat up, he's got all these injuries, he's been
There's
left in
no
there
one
for
else
14
around.
hours. So,
Mm-hmm.
but here's what I don't. She's not charged. I don't think they charge her in that case, in that instance, with that scenario. They're not charging her with second degree. They're going with culpable, probably to
Mm-hmm.
start out with. But it would have probably been weeks to try to figure
Mm-hmm.
it out, and they would have had to dig deep into their background. They would have gotten digital. They would have tried to get search warrants for her phone and different things.
Yep.
And then, of course, she would have. It would have been in her best interest at that moment to have deleted those videos, even if she was obstructing justice, because I'd rather take that than say, yeah, there's a video there, than have the video that was played for the jury actually played for the jury. Um,
They can still extract those, though, can't they? Once they've been deleted.
uh, Sometimes for a
Okay.
period of time, but not if you wiped the phone or you got rid of the phone.
Not if you're Higgins.
Yeah. But if you, but yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
there's ways around that. But I mean, it would have required her to have a brand new phone. But like I said, um, if she would have gotten an attorney who would have been speaking with her, this whole case goes different. I
Yep.
mean, and that's what she should have done, which is again why I say the takeaway from this as a viewer is if you find yourself in a situation where the police have come to your house and there's been something that's happened and they tell you, we just want to talk to you because we need to figure it out, there's a reason why you have a right to remain silent. And you
Mhm.
better use that right to remain silent because they're not going to tell you honest information. And there was a case recently, I can't remember the case now, it just happened, but they were talking about that um, they needed to have the Miranda rights read because it was a dispute over whether or not a statement could come in. Because once the Miranda rights are read, it opens up the ability for the police to lie to you. It opens up for all of that to be
I
legal and
think that's
okay.
what the defence was trying to with their trying to um, insinuate that they had lured her in to collect her phone on under false pretenses, but that's not illegal.
Right. And and the thing, but this is why the average everyday citizen needs to understand that a lot of times what police do is they bait you into their interrogation room because they tell you, all right,
Yep.
I want to know what's going on, and especially if you're
No, I
guilty.
already know what's going on. You just need to fill in this bit.
Well, if you're a guilty person, though, what they're banking on is the person that shows up at the police station who can't stand it is the guilty one.
Yep.
Because they're going to come in and they're going to be like, what do you have? Because they're trying to get away. And they want to have an opportunity to explain it because they have a guilty conscience.
Hmm.
So now the problem is it also can be sometimes you have innocent people that are like, I want to know what's going on too. And they think they trust the police and they're like, I'm going to come in and talk to the police officers. I want to help out. And what they don't realize is this police officer might be looking at them as a suspect and
Hmm.
they're going to, again, many people have asked, well, why do they use polygraph tests? Well, they use polygraph tests not because they care about ever finding anything out with it. It's used as an interrogation tool. They're going to hook you, as my
Are
dad
they still
explained to me.
admissible?
What's that now?
Are they still admissible?
No, oh no, they are not admissible. That's why I remember asking my dad. I said, well, why would the police? And he said, well, it's real simple.
Not
They're
accurate,
going to tell you you failed. No, they're going to tell you you failed the polygraph test every time.
regardless.
Regardless. Yeah. So when a police officer
Ah.
says, hey, come in and take a polygraph test, I just need to eliminate you. It's not used in court, but it helps us in our
Mm.
investigation. Then what they're going to do is they're going to strap you up. They're going to take you, they're going to get a statement out of you because you have to give a statement to the polygraph examiner. So they're
Yeah,
going to
you have
get
to
a
answer the
statement
questions
there.
truthfully. Yeah.
They're going to do a pre-interview before you ever show up. You're going to get a pre-interview with the examiner. You're going to get the examination. They're going to get 3 different stories out of you. And then they're going
Hmm.
to get to come in and say, okay, you failed this test. So why would you have failed the test on this question? What, and then you're going to go, well, I have no idea. Well, why? And the anticipation is that if you're guilty, even if you didn't fail the test, you may give up something. Or
Yep.
even if you're not guilty and you think you failed the test, it's going to put you in a position, if you know anything at all, you're going to be
You got to
trying
give
to
it
be
up.
like, oh my God, well, this is what happened. Please don't,
Yep.
don't lock me up forever. Um, so that's the premise of that.
Um, what was the other thing that I wanted to? The argument towards the end, the the state was arguing about this aggravated assault, and the defence was saying, but that has never been charged. Like, she wasn't charged with aggravated assault, was she?
No,
Or
she's
is
only
that,
charged with one count.
yeah? And that was
Well,
part of the jury instructions and what they were putting in there to do with, because actually can't even remember who won that argument. Because that was well like 9 hours into the stream, I think. But yeah, why are they arguing this aggravated assault when it wasn't? charged initially?
Well,
And why wasn't
because
she charged with that if she?
that's an interesting thing because again, I think they felt like there wasn't enough evidence probably to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Remember, they can argue anything that they want, right? But the idea
Even with
here,
all that blunt force trauma?
well, the problem is um, the aggravated assault only comes into effect because they don't know how it happened. He could have. I mean, here's the thing: he could have gotten all that blunt force trauma trying to get out of the suitcase.
Yep.
Okay. So the problem you have, the aggravated assault only comes out of her testimony to the jury. So there wasn't enough information to charge her based on what they had because she never admitted to an aggravated assault in the interrogation room. But their theory was she committed an aggravated assault with the baseball bat by her own admission. So what the state was arguing was that if you look at her story of battered spouse, she says, I committed an aggravated assault, and they were just flipping it around. She's claiming she's using the bat to keep him in, and they're saying, no, what she's doing is admitting to an aggravated assault. That she's beating him with the baseball bat to keep him in the suitcase. And
So is this that post hoc aggro?
no, the post hoc
No.
simply deals with this. It just deals with the fact that the abusive behavior doesn't necessarily impact what happened. In other words, the reason she did this, because remember, this was not a case about whether she did it. Or whether she was involved. It's about why it happened.
Yep.
Why did she not help him get out of the suitcase? And that was the act she was charged with. And again, she admits by her own admission, I zipped him up. I left him in the suitcase. It was a joke at first.
And then do everything possible.
And then he starts trying to get out. And then next thing you know, it goes from a joke to a disaster. And, this whole thing just develops. So, the post hoc ergo propter deals with the idea that you cannot just assume because abuse is present that she didn't commit second degree unaliving, right?
Okay.
Because at that moment, you could still be an abused person and you could still shoot this guy because, hey, he's pissed you off today because you found out he was cheating on you. And that has nothing to do with abuse. So you pull out the gun and you shoot him. What they were trying to argue is that she was upset with him about other things, that he was a cheater, that he was a bad boyfriend, that was outside of the abuse factor. And that at this moment, this was about anger. This was about her settling a score and not about fear of abuse, which I understand why some people might be able to get into her mindset and say, but the problem is, again, this is the issue I have with where everything went. I don't believe the state proved beyond a reasonable doubt that it couldn't have been abuse.
No.
And that's the problem. But but I felt like the jury didn't really get that. The jury felt like, well, since it's self-defense, she's got to prove it's self-defense. She's got to prove she has a burden of proof.
Isn't
now
that
in this
part
case.
of why the whole diagnosis of the PTSD and the battered spouse syndrome was so important in this? Because that then established this pattern, this trauma, this repeated, the trigger, the mindset that I don't think that was clearly enough explained to them about how that cycle of abuse works and how that impacts on someone's cognition and ability to
right. But here's the thing.
rationalize and
Again, when they got her on cross-examination, that's why the state went after her and said, do you know who this person is? Do you know who this person is? Didn't you accuse him of cheating? Didn't you do this? Weren't you upset with him? Weren't you mad that he went and got the wine? Weren't you frustrated with him?
Yep.
And if you can say, okay, when he was in there, this was a culmination of, I'm getting back at you.
Mm-hmm.
That is a depraved mind. And that's what, if you bring up second degree,
you've got to prove
homicide, the depraved mind aspect, only a depraved person would lock someone in a suitcase because she says, now I got you. Now you're going to listen to me. And then they leave him in there. And then she says, oh, it's on you to get out. And then She walks away, passes out drunk, goes outside, smokes a cigarette, passes
Yeah.
out drunk, goes up to bed, wakes up the next morning and says, "Oh my God, holy crap, I left him in there.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to,
Yep.
but you did in the moment. You were drunk." Now, again, because the defense put it all on the abuse excuse, the problem that they created was they had to create this story of, well, he's putting his hand out and she feels completely threatened, which I don't necessarily completely believe. But the bottom line was,
They had to establish that overt act.
but they had to establish the overt
Yep.
act in order to kick that in because that
Yep.
was the only
Yep.
defense that they
Yep.
thought was going to work in the short term.
Mhm.
But the bottom line was, again, what the defense should have been doing was, in my opinion, was focusing more on the proof beyond a reasonable doubt. You've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was this. Could
That
it have
she
been
didn't
abuse?
perceive this as not a threat.
Right. Could she have perceived it as a threat? If it's
Yes.
reasonable to
Yes.
think she could have, and I think it
Yes.
is, it could have
Yes.
been that. And then it also could have been, but then at the same point, I find myself when I'm watching that video, okay, and I hear her talking to him like he's a dog, I almost think, nah, she's not that. No.
See, I was in the mindset once they'd established the battered spouse syndrome. That's the mindset that I was watching the
But see,
trial
that's the post hoc ergo propter that
at.
you cannot allow the past abuse. You have to determine at the moment that this occurred and the decision was made, and in the law is clear, there had to have been an imminent threat that she perceived,
Yeah.
and then it had to have then triggered her to again use a level of force that was well above what was necessary
Yep.
because she thought the threat to her was deadly.
Yep.
I don't believe in that moment she thought and this is the problem. See, Jody, right here's the problem. And this is what she was saying. They were playing. She did not believe he was going to kill her. That's
Not
it.
to start with, I don't think. No.
I don't think she thought he was going to kill her in the thing because she kept going back and forth to. I never thought this was going to happen. If she would have told the police from day one, I thought he was going to kill me. I got scared, and then I didn't know what to do, and then I was drunk and I passed out.
Yep.
That's not
Okay.
guilty.
Yep. But then, all right, you then put that in the frame of mind again of the battered spouse syndrome at that time that she was being interviewed. Now, part of that cycle and mindset is that you protect that person. That cycle, like they were codependent. It was a toxic codependency. So she is trying to protect and minimize what's going on in her and just to justify it in her own head as well and to cope with it. And that's where I thought the alcoholism came into it. That was part of a coping strategy for her to deal with this abuse. And then the cycle just perpetuated. And that's how I was viewing the trial, or trying to anyway, in that sense. So when I saw the video of her, of him in the suitcase, and yes, it was horrific. But in my mind, I was thinking, all right, this could be intrusive thoughts. All right, this is the start of that cycle. This is the start of her thought process where she's going, okay, I'm building up that phase. I'm building up. I'm waiting for it. Then you have the overt act, which then triggers this huge emotional trauma response from the diagnosis that they'd established of PTSD, and then that is what her perception then at that point is when the baseball bat came out, and then the justifiable. Do you know what I mean? That's where I thought that defense was going, and that's what they needed to. I honestly thought they had a case there with that. Had they established that more, perhaps. I don't know. I actually started to feel sorry for her, and then when the jury came back, I felt like I'd been.
Well, the problem though is, Jody, like
I'd
Elizabeth. Well, Elizabeth just made a fantastic point here, and this is what I'm saying: the videos do not bear out what you said, and that's the problem. He's begging her to get out. He's not threatening her. He's not screaming at her. And I want you to think
that was done.
No, but yeah, but I want you to think. Okay,
allegedly.
so just think about this for a minute.
Mhm.
Think about the sense this makes, right? Now, I don't doubt if he gets out of the suitcase, maybe he would have beat the hell out of her, right?
Yeah.
But do you really think he's begging her, please, baby, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. So how does it transpond in any situation where you got a guy in a suitcase and he says, you know what, I think I'm going to transition from sweet talk to let me out or I'm going to kill you. I'm going to end you. What?
She
No
could have
one's
provoked him for sure.
no. What
And then,
I mean is he's not going to talk to her like that to get her. Every abuser, always has a little bit of their manipulation side. But very seldomly would you lock in a suitcase where she has the key to get you out. Why in the heck would you think? And again, if he was trying to get out, if the hand was going to come out, why wasn't when she shot that first video? Why don't we see a hand coming out? Because I don't think there was ever a hand coming out.
yeah,
I don't. I think she made that up because I think she would have told that story to the police then. Because there was. I don't think that he's going to be sitting there raging out inside this suitcase, thinking, "Oh yeah, let me intimidate her into opening it." That doesn't make any sense. He's going to be telling her, "Baby, please let me out." And then when she opens that suitcase and he bursts out, maybe. But that's not what she said. She says that there's a hand and he starts to push it through. And again, now think about this too. If his hand would have gotten through, he could have easily busted that zipper. Think about how easy it is to bust a zipper of a coat.
yeah.
He would have busted out of that suitcase. So there's no way that she's going to struggle to get this thing closed the way she says, and she's going to hit him with the baseball bat. What she did is she closed that suitcase. She was mad. She was hitting him with the suit. She was hitting him with the bat. And I don't think her intent was to leave him in there all night. No. But I don't know what her intent was. But I think she was blackout drunk. And I think she passed out. And I think he got left in the suitcase. Yep. And I think she was taking out all her rage on him. She had him finally in a place where she felt like she could do that, to say all those things. I don't think she was thinking to herself, I'm going to kill you. But that's where you say only a depraved mind would do something like this and leave you in there. Now, that's where you might get into the interesting argument of trying to say, hold on, Balin, our neighbor has a dog and the dog is out. And
is it called Balin?
Yeah, his name is Balin.
I've got a nephew called Balin.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
Balin. Hold on one second.
Great name. It's the name of a surfboard over here. Top brand, actually.
And he likes to bark anybody passes by, but specifically this dog is out. Hold on.
Hey, Connor.
Hello, Connor. I'm live. What's up?
And now you know why it's so hard
I figured they were out there.
Down. Because he's got so many.
All right, hold on.
He's so busy.
All right. Go on over there with mommy, okay? He has no shirt on, so he just got up. Well, he got up when he heard the dog, so he came running out, and he just saw he loves that dog, so that's why he was telling me. I just saw Mr. Trenton and Kyla. They're out in their yard. I said, I figured. But yeah, I mean, I just thought, to me, like I said, that's what I like they raised this possibility. But I think when that jury went back in that room and they looked at the totality of the situation and then they said, okay, it's a depraved mind. I mean, and that's what they had to find out. Or it was a dangerous, this was an act to where, again, I feel like the best way to have handled this case was to plead it out. I mean, but unfortunately, Owens wanted her to take that plea.
There's no way. She's too arrogant. She's too narcissistic.
Well, she's got problems. I mean, she really does. And I think that now maybe she gets some help for those problems, because here's the thing, guys.
Hopefully.
She isn't going to necessarily go away for the rest of her life. I mean, she's going to get a life sentence. She'll get I believe it. I don't know if the judge doesn't even have to make it 22 to life. I don't think that's mandatory. He could just give her a flat 22-year sentence. He could give her a 16.5-year sentence.
I thought the minimum was 16 and a
well, and listen, she gets a PSI, and her attorney is going to get to argue this. Hey, now it's a mitigation factor that she was abused, that went into her mind. In other words, this now they're only asking for an hour for the sentencing hearing, but the
Yeah.
judge has heard all this. So my hope is that the judge um, doesn't throw the book at her in the sense that he decides to give
All the
her,
shit that she's
you
putting
know,
through.
30 or 40 years to life, and at least says, hey, gives her the 22 and a half. Now, and
I
you, if
liked
I,
him. I thought he was very fair and very.
well, I think he was a little bit biased towards her, in a sense, but yeah, I thought he was a pretty good, thorough judge. I mean,
Mm.
he was pretty decent, in terms of, but I think he would let his frustration show and his bias show. But when he was called out on the mat, like for instance, he should have cut that prosecution expert. What they did, the way they sandbagged the defense, and again, this will be an
Oh,
appeal issue. She should have been tall. She should have been stricken from the case.
absolutely. That's what I said. She should have. That whole thing
Well,
should have been
but
stricken.
if he does that, the
Appellate issue.
state's case, no, the state's case would have went bye bye. They would have not had another expert lined up
Yeah,
to
no, but
refute
they
the
left
battered
it for
spouse.
4 days before the
Yeah.
trial. Like they obviously
Well,
just
yeah, but Jody,
thought,
you have to remember that they believed she was going to represent herself. And they didn't. And if she would have been representing herself, they would have never even had battered spouse come in because she would
no.
have never understood how to get it.
So they obviously
And
thought that that was a threat enough for them to have to retain someone to um, negate the other expert, because that was the other thing that got me. You know, you've got two experts, one for the state, one for the defence. Now, the defence's expert had a huge amount of time with her, 9 sessions or something it worked out, and it was done in a close proximity to the time of the incident. So it was more relevant. The issues that she was going through, the cycle of abuse, were pertinent at the time. The assessment done 4 days before the trial is completely different. She's wide awake. She had 4 years out of that cycle. Her conditions are completely different. Yes, she probably has got adjustment disorder because she's incarcerated, has
yep.
been for 5 years. So the whole circumstance are completely different. It was irrelevant. Does that make sense? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it was. I just thought it was totally inappropriate for them at that point because her assessment, the baseline would have been completely different.
Well, her assessment, it was clear to me that she, number one, didn't put enough time into the case
Oh
to
God,
really, in
no,
my opinion, be a trusted individual
no.
as far as
Her
relying on
credibility was.
her opinion,
Yep,
because she was absolutely, in my opinion,
I've got a
not
clip of it
not
somewhere.
not prepared at
No,
all for what she was doing, bringing
no.
into the case.
And she was very arrogant too. Like she was
Oh, she was very.
almost to the point of I've got to sit here and drink
It
water out of a
was,
plastic cup.
yeah, it
Goodness
was like,
me.
yeah, it was not impressive at all in
No.
terms of, and in the fact that she comes up with this uh, diagnosis and doesn't let the defense know. And, I think, you know, well, I think, did you see there, there was an interesting theory put forth by Hannah B there, that she said that she thinks
Oh,
that he could
forgot
have
it.
clobbered him with a bat, put him in the suitcase, and thrown him down the steps. I always said he was throwing down the steps in the suitcase. I know he ended up in
Yeah, I
the,
know that was. I don't think they
but
had the timeline to do that. They like they didn't establish that well enough
well, I
with the
thought I
neighbours
thought the interesting thing was that the state didn't, that wasn't hammered on enough, was what the neighbors said happened. Number
Mm.
one, they said there was arguing all day. Number two, they saw her outside sleeping on the patio. So where does that fit into the timeline that she fell asleep on her patio?
Yeah,
She said,
I don't recall hearing that, but
yeah, that was from the neighbor. That was from, hold on here.
whose bedroom was right beside the staircase.
Yes, and he heard a loud
Hmm.
thump. He heard a loud what you call it,
Yep.
loud noise, which would indicate that suitcase was possibly thrown down the staircase. So let's go in here. Give me a moment.
Because I had a guest on to discuss this case the other day on my channel, and um, he was of the mindset too that he took the thought process that, there's a possibility that the suitcase being a material that he thought that it would have been more breathable, and the ability to have a bit more of an oxygen exchange through that fabric could have been um, more than it was, obviously. And there was no testing done on the fabric at all.
All right, so
I
here
think
we
it was an
go.
assumption that could have been.
All right, I'm going to do a screen share here of this. Here, give me a moment. All right, full testimony. Do. All right.
Okay, that's that one there that's set up. That is the
All right.
witness,
So let
the,
me
the rebuttal witness.
add this screen share to the
I
scene.
copped a
Oh,
bit.
hold on here. Sorry, guys. We still got to work out. There we go. All right. So let's watch this brief little, because I had actually clipped this out, so that's why I'm
Who's
able to
this?
go.
Oh, this is the neighbour.
That says she
Vincent?
fell. Yep. I want to see if I'm correct on this.
Thank you, sir. You can be seated. State and spell your name for the record for us.
Yeah, my name is Brandon Moats, BrandonMoats.
Thank you. Mr. Cacciatore, you may inquire.
Mr. Story.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us how it is that you knew Chillwood Apartments? Is that correct?
Honestly, I avoided them as much as possible usually.
The apartment where you lived, tell us, how would you describe the walls that separated the units?
Yeah, I remember that my bedroom was like the front-facing bedroom, and our walls shared a wall with where their staircase was. So, like, the way the apartments were laid out, we had a one-story apartment, they had a two-story apartment. So they had a staircase running right next to the walls, next to, like, our bedrooms.
Would you ever have occasion to hear arguing and yelling going on inside of the defendant's apartment?
Yes, the walls were pretty thin, so if people were yelling, you could definitely hear it.
And how often would you hear arguments or disagreements going on over there?
When I first moved in, it was it was at least like once a week, to the point that I started tuning them out. Like I got good enough at just like not listening to them. They argued very, very often.
Do you recall the evening of February 23rd, 2020?
Yes, sir.
And on that evening, could you hear arguing going on in their unit?
Not late into the evening, earlier into the evening, probably like 7, 8 o'clock that evening, probably. Like earlier on, I could hear arguing.
And where were you inside of your apartment?
I would have been in my bedroom pretty much all night.
And your bedroom, just so that we can paint the picture, where would that have been, on the first floor or the second floor?
We had a first floor apartment.
Okay, so all the units were, or all the bedrooms were on the first floor?
Yeah, like I was saying before, we had a one-story apartment, and then they next door had like a two-story townhouse, so we only had the one floor.
Understood. And at a certain point in the evening, did you hear a loud crashing sound?
Yeah, probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock that evening.
And can you describe that sound for us in more detail?
I mean, yeah, at literally, like I said, at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, it's the way their staircase was set up. I could my bedroom, the top of their staircase would have been like above my ceiling, and then it ends next to where like my roommate's apartment was. So I could hear something like above me super loud and then fall away from me like it was falling down the stairs.
Isn't that when she was claiming she was dragged
Did
down the
this,
stairs?
did this affect the walls that were between your two apartments?
Oh yeah, me and my roommate, I remember me and my roommate talking the next day about like we could literally like it shook both of our rooms.
Did you ever have occasion to talk with the defendant about what happened?
I never saw her after that. She would have, I never saw her after that happened.
No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
I'll be back in 1 minute.
You ever had any interactions with Sarah Boone or George Torres? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said you tried to avoid them.
I don't like drunk people, and they were drunk a lot, so I did not interact with them.
Okay. Do you remember this interaction with Sarah Boone in 2009 when you woke up and witnessed Sarah?
I would have been 9 years old in 2009.
I'm sorry, 2019. Good catch. In 2019, when you woke up and witnessed Sarah sleeping on the concrete patio.
Oh, this may have been a slight misconception in how I said this. I never woke up and saw her sitting on the patio myself. I would have seen her on the patio eventually, but it's not like I woke up and went back and saw her on the patio. This was my roommate relaying the story that she had fallen asleep on the back patio, and then I saw her.
Okay. So you did not witness that yourself, or did you see her?
I saw her asleep on the back patio. I was just clearing up the sequence of events there.
Okay, thank you. Another time, do you recall our interaction with Miss Boone when you were coming home from school and she was trying to talk to you and she seemed paranoid and rambling?
Yeah, I had gotten locked out of my apartment, so I was waiting on the steps waiting on the steps outside of my apartment for my roommate to get home. So she came up and started talking to me. I don't really remember too many details of what she was saying, because I didn't want to talk to her. But yeah.
Okay. Do you remember saying that you believe Sarah was avoiding going into her apartment?
That's definitely the vibe. I don't remember what she was saying, but the vibe she was giving off was that she didn't want to go home.
Now, I believe, and I just want to make sure that I heard you, you said that the first arguments, other than the boom, which was 10-something, initially it was around 7 p.m. you heard arguing?
It would have, yeah, because it would have been, I remember that day I got home from class around 5, because I got out of class around 4:30 usually and walked home, so I would have gotten home around 5:30. And it would have been after because I came home, I made myself lunch, and I took a shower, and then I heard all of their arguing. So it would have been about an hour and a half, 2 hours after I got home, so around 7 to 8 o'clock.
Okay. And during that time, when you say arguing, was it back and forth?
Honestly, I wouldn't really be able to say if it was back and forth. I don't know I wouldn't remember too vividly if it was back and forth or if it was
Let me
just
ask you
one
this,
person
did you
yelling.
hear a male voice?
Yes, I heard a male voice.
Did you hear a female voice?
Yes.
Okay, were they both loud?
Yes.
Okay. if I can confirm, Judge.
Yes, sir, of course. All right, sir, you're released subject to recall. Thank you.
All right, so it's not clear, obviously, guys, and I'm going to play the other roommates' testimony as well, but it's not clear, obviously, here on when that incident was that she was left out on the patio. But let's see here. There we go. But let's play this one here and see, because this was the roommate that actually saw it. So let's see what he has to say in this. But the thing that's indisputable, which I think that we want to talk about here now, Jody, you were saying that you thought that was when she was dragged up the steps, because I didn't
Didn't she say that she was dragged the night before? She was dragged down the stairs by her hair, and she was missing a chunk of hair.
I don't believe she said that happened when the suitcase incident happened, because she was not. Otherwise, that would have been absolutely.
No, the night before the suitcase.
Yeah, but he was saying this was the night of the suitcase, that he heard a loud crash at 11 o'clock, right when.
Yeah.
Now we
Yep,
see on
yep.
the video when that suitcase is down, we see her or that suitcase at the bottom of the steps, and right around the time that they're saying they heard a loud crash, which is what I said. I believe she puts him in, or he gets put in a suitcase upstairs. Here's what I believe happened.
Okay.
I think he goes upstairs and hides, because she was trying to remember. She could never explain why was the suitcase just randomly downstairs.
Well, she said that they were clearing out Lucas's closet.
Well,
and
I
he
think
was going to.
I think it was upstairs, and he went. They're playing hide and seek.
Ah,
He hides,
okay.
right? And then I think she zips that suitcase up, or finishes zipping it up, and then takes it. And she's in this rage, like she basically, because here's what I think really happened. I think he said, "Tag, you're it. I want to play." She wants to go to bed. Because remember what we saw in those videos, right? We see
Which is juvenile.
Well, we see how she was in those videos, and you have to apply that.
Mm-hmm.
He goes up and hides. She's enraged. Remember when he still wanted to stay up, and she's yelling at him, "I want to go to sleep." She's ready to go to sleep, right? And you see how she acts. She goes up and finds him and says, "You want to play hide and go seek?" She zips it up and says, "You want to play hide and go seek, George? I'm ready to go to bed. You're nothing but a drunk. You went out, And she takes that suitcase, and in that rage, she throws him down the steps. And then, of course, he's down this. Now, when she turns the video back on, she's talking smack to him. "Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. Da 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 da." And that's what
Didn't
they heard.
their stairways go down and then to the right? Didn't it?
It might have. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to go back.
In that video at the end when he was like in the rebuttal case where they presented those videos, I thought that the stairs went sort of down.
Well, even if it did, it would have said, he might have landed on the landing. That would explain all the blunt force trauma. That would explain all of the damage that was done to him. And then she further pushes him down, and that's why he ends up down where he was at in position. And he's begging her, "Please let me out. I can't breathe. Please, please, Sarah, please." And she's going, "Yeah, that's right." And when I think she just lost it. He got in that suitcase, and she just absolutely lost it. Absolutely lost it. All right, let's listen to this
State,
guy.
you may call your next witness.
State will call Vincent.
Sir, you may be seated.
To love a good hour.
Can you tell us what it is you do for a living?
Right now,
Where were you living at that time?
yeah, that was it. Them.
That's Brandon Moats?
Yes.
Did you have neighbors?
Yeah.
No, I lived on my own.
Neighbors with Sarah Boone and George Torres.
Yes.
And approximately how long were you neighbors with them?
About a year, a little over a year. I moved there in January 2019.
And during the course of that year that you were neighbors with them, did you have occasion to interact with them at times?
Yeah.
In fact, did you ever go over to their home?
Yeah. Like a couple times, yeah.
And I believe you tuned a guitar for the child there at the house?
Yeah.
Oh, Lucas.
This Tealwood apartment complex, how would you describe the walls that separated your units?
Thin, like very thin walls.
And with those walls being so thin,
Can you imagine
would you
what he
ever have
would?
occasion to hear arguing and yelling coming from Sarah Boone and George Torres's apartment?
Yeah.
How often would you hear this?
Almost daily.
Did Sarah Boone ever approach you about the things that you heard coming from their apartment?
Yes.
And where were you when she approached you?
I was smoking a cigarette on my back patio.
And approximately what time
It was
was this?
pretty late. I can't remember the exact time, but it was definitely anywhere between like midnight to 2 a.m., like right around there.
And do you remember how much before the date when the police called that this occurred?
A few months, like probably 4 to 5 months before that.
So 4 or 5 months before February of 2020.
Yeah.
And when she approached you on this late evening / early morning on that day, what did she tell you?
Pretty much just kind of like, if I do hear anything, like through the walls or whatever is out back, just kind of keep my mouth shut. Like, don't really speak about it or anything like that or say anything to anyone. And I just was like,
Really?
okay.
Did she make any motions with her hands?
Yeah, like just kind of like, finger over the lips, like kind of shh, like keep it hush, like that kind of thing.
So she told you not to report anything you may have heard about arguments or yelling or fighting, anything going on over there?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you recall the evening of February 23rd, 2020?
I do, yeah.
And what about that evening sticks out to you?
That sticks out to me from that night was literally just there was a very, very loud noise that I heard that was loud and powerful enough to shake my bedroom wall. And I remember that because I was sitting on my bed on FaceTime with my girlfriend at the time, and I literally felt the wall shake, and it stopped me mid-conversation. And she even asked me through the computer, like, what was that? And I was like, I have no idea.
Did you hear any yelling coming from their apartment on that night?
Before that, yeah, like it was just arguing kind of stuff.
What was the last thing you heard?
The last thing I heard was like the loud noise and just a little bit of shuffling, and that was kind of it. It just kind of went silent after that.
Could you hear anything that was being said?
Not clearly, and it was never really anything clear. It was just like you could hear arguing back and forth, just kind of like an I hate you, like it's whatever it is, whatever the argument was about kind of thing. At the time, that's really all it was, but it was never really clear enough to hear like the full argument. And honestly, I never really paid attention too much to it. If I heard it, I kind of stepped into my living room to be further away from it. So.
Did you hear both the defendant's voice and also George Torres's voice?
Yeah, all the time. It was like a back and forth. Yeah.
So other than the statements and the phrases of I hate you, you weren't able to discern the contents of this argument?
No.
What was the last sound you heard?
The last sound that I heard was like the loud banging noise that it was like a very odd sounding noise that I've never heard before this day, but it very much sounded like it was like where my bed was positioned. It was kind of towards the back of the apartment, and it almost sounded like it was coming towards me, but like on the side of me, Then it was just like a loud rumbling noise, like that literally sounded like it was kind of far away from me, and then it like ended up like almost next to me. And like I said, the walls are thin, so like it's very easy to hear like through the walls, and not even just sideways. Like I hear my upstairs neighbor, like all around, very thin walls.
Now, was your bedroom, where was it located in your apartment?
The back of the apartment, so it was like there's like a little kick out next to my patio, and that's like that was my bedroom back there, like along the grass back there.
On the first floor?
On the first floor, yeah.
I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Mr. Tagley, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you said that you lived there next to Sarah Boone and George Torres for about a year.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that the police were called to their residence
Like,
while you were there for the year? Are you aware of any incident in which the police were called to their residence?
I had never seen anybody there, but I had had other neighbors in the complex tell me that it has been on multiple occasions. So that's why.
Just instead of what somebody else told you,
Yeah.
just what you would observe. Did you ever, the year that you were there living next to them,
Yeah.
were you ever aware that the police were called to their residence?
No, the times that I was home, I never saw any police at the apartment there.
Right. And did you work odd hours or you went?
Yeah, and with my schooling and stuff too, I used to have class at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So all the time I was at random moments, like just not home throughout the day and night and stuff like that. So yeah.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not, based on your interaction with Sarah Boone?
I'm going to object.
Let me finish the question first, please.
Do you know, from your experience with Sarah Boone and your experience with George Torres, that they drank alcohol?
Yeah.
Hang on.
I'll withdraw to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are you aware that they both consumed alcohol to excess?
Yes.
Thank you. Hold on.
Yes, sir, of course.
Now, Vincent, I think you had testified, you may have given a statement to law enforcement,
Yes, it was one of the detectives.
a recorded statement?
Yes, I can't remember his name, but yes.
Okay, and I think it was on February 23rd of 2020.
Yeah, right around that time, yeah.
I believe you had said that,
I'm going to object as to improper impeachment.
Approach.
Improper impeachment.
Well, yes, because the way he's going about the impeachment is it's
Objection's overruled for now.
There it is. Well, they came back. I cut that out.
sir, would it be fair to say on that date you got home around 7 p.m.?
7 p.m.?
Yes.
Which day was this?
Sunday, February 23rd, 2020.
No, that day I actually got home from work probably around 1 or 2 o'clock or so.
In the morning?
No, in the afternoon. Because I went to work that morning at around 5 a.m.
And you said that you heard the normal yelling and arguing at about that time when you got home?
No, it was around that time, but it was really around like 10 o'clock, 10:30 is when like the arguing I could very hear clearly. It was like around 10:30 at night.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Right. So yeah. So essentially, obviously, I'm glad I rewatched that because apparently the sleeping on the patio, which I was surprised it never came up, was something that was happened previously to that evening. But what we I think established here is both of these neighbors heard something falling down the steps, which
Yeah.
Sarah Boone tried to say was a different evening. But again, I think she has every reason to want that to be a different evening. And again, these guys, I'm sure this statement was given to the police right after that, and they're remembering it because that was a significant situation when all of a sudden police are at their house and they're like, "Last night, this is what happened." So, but I think it throws a whole different context into this situation when you look at and then you look at that 2 hours, and I don't have it pinpointed inside that 2 hour presentation because I only have the 2 hours of it of it. But when you look at that and you see how she treated George Torres, I saw Maui Swift said she believes that Sarah Boone may have been the principal abuser. Listen, that's what her ex-husband was saying at one point. So again, I think he might have been violent, yes, but I think if you saw the stuff, like who's the one controlling everything? She's the one that's going to tell him, "I'm going to restrict this. I'm going to take your money away." He doesn't have a job. The classical abusive situation is that the abuser would have all the control and be able to control the person. Now, George, I think what you saw was and this is that his abuse came out of being pushed, where she would just sit there and go at him and go at him and go at him, and then eventually he would be like, he'd have enough, and then she would come back and say, "Well, yeah, he choked me out, he did this." She is a very manipulative individual, as we've seen throughout this entire case. She hasn't been able to cooperate with any attorneys. She obviously manipulated James Owens into taking this case for free, and he was hoping to get the big victory and launch his career as the next big thing in criminal defense, and he didn't win the case.
Wasn't he close to retiring?
Well, no, he's from what I saw looking at his website, I think he's either in his late 50s or early 60s. So I think he's at a point where he would love to be able to take only cases that are interesting to him. He probably, and that's a great way to do that, is to win a case like this, and then, which again, I think
he'll get paid for interviews post trial and stuff, can't he?
Well, no. He has his own law firm.
Yeah, but
I mean, he's gonna. Yeah, I mean, he's got his own full law firm. He set it all aside for this case. I mean, listen, what he did in this, it shows that he's a vigorous advocate. But what he was hoping
actually
for,
think that, like, when he was doing his closing, I was convinced that he was convinced.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Like, he believed.
Yep.
He 100%. He was committed.
Yes. Yes.
Is it true that there is no time served on unaliving charges?
Well, no. There could be. I mean, but I don't. But the minimum sentence. Well, the minimum sentence is 16 and a half years, so it would have to be one heck of a long pre-trial. But yeah, is it possible to get time served? Yeah, they could resentence you, and then you would have to go before the parole board.
No, I think he means, like, with the sentence, do you get that time served taken off?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes, okay. She does, yes, always. To my knowledge, now maybe there's a provision. I never looked that up. In fact, if what you're saying is she doesn't get credit for the time she's in jail, is what you're saying.
I think that's the point that he was.
Who told you that?
I don't know. The comment that Elizabeth just made was, did you hear about the incident where during the lunch break, I think it was day 5, where James Owens said to the judge that he wanted to go over the actual exhibit of the suitcase with Sarah because he hadn't had a chance to have a look at it at all, and it was during the lunch break, and the prosecution was not happy with, they'd already objected to it prior. So the judge said, yeah, that's fine, no worries, we'll take a recess. The judge left the bench, and there was a court reporter who reports back to another YouTuber that sits in the court, who sat right behind Sarah actually, she calls in on all the breaks and updates what's happening inside the courtroom. And apparently the prosecution basically grabbed the box with the suitcase in it and upended it into the courtroom and went, "There's your evidence." And it was a massive big, yeah. That's why James Owens made a big deal about the paperclip that had come loose from the zipper the next day when they were using the exhibit to get it out. That's the point he was trying to make, because the judge wasn't there. You're muted.
Oh, so he was saying that. Sorry, I didn't even realize it was me. So he was. So you're saying that he was saying that that he was trying to make the point that they basically damaged the evidence
Yeah.
when they were being rude, essentially, in their attempt to be rude to the defense, because they were mad over the fact that the case was getting delayed further. They throw the suitcase down, dislodge the paperclip, which of course is a problem because
that paperclip was attached to the actual, the little zipper, which would have made it easier to open.
Oh, I see. Okay, which is then when the jury starts to see this, or it goes before the jury. So did they put the paper? Do we know? I guess, do we know if the paperclip got put back on?
Didn't get addressed. No, I don't think it did. No.
Let me
and it
look
was
up.
only that there was a court reporter in there that had spoken to recovery addicts who I had jumped over to during the recess to get that review because I knew she was going to call in, that I heard it. Otherwise, it wasn't televised at all.
So let me see here. Yes, in most jurisdictions. I'm looking this up. Sorry, in Florida. I didn't have that part.
Udahef is actually in Florida. He's in, and I've forgotten the name of it.
Yes. Yeah, it says right here. Yes, in Florida, you do get credit for time served in jail on a murder or unaliving charge prior to conviction, meaning that the time awaiting trial will be deducted from your final sentence. So absolutely. I thought you did. And of course, Florida operates on the 85% rule where you have to serve 85% of your sentence. Yeah. So yeah, you absolutely you absolutely do get the time served calculation.
Is that the noise? Is that the name for the noise down the stairs? The boom boom.
The boom boom. That's right. Yeah.
Someone should make a song about that.
Well, like I said, I think that, in my opinion, I think that she did that. I think she threw him down the steps. I think that happened. And I think that explains the injuries.
Blunt force trauma.
Yep, the blunt force trauma. But look, this, at the end of the day, in the back of my mind, what Maui Swift was saying, I felt like the state was showing that Sarah Boone might have been the more abusive of the two. And while I understand that can be a very dicey situation to get into when you have someone who's saying it's abuse, and you certainly don't want to discredit that. But judging, if you watch that 2 hours of footage, I got the feeling, I'm like, she's, this is just a toxic relationship. Yep.
150%.
So, all right. So, Jody, so I guess we've been going now for an hour and 25 minutes. So I guess
time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
I know. So what other I guess we should throw, maybe we've been kind of answering questions, but I guess
got any questions? James Owens is 63, is he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because I suppose we should probably keep it to a reasonable amount of time since we're
since it's a podcast, and I did a 10.5-hour stream last
right
night.
Exactly. And trying to at least say, okay, we're keep this to be reasonable with the algorithm and everything else to help.
Well, yeah. What was improper impeachment? How do you?
Well, improper impeachment would simply mean that he was using something to impeach that wasn't admissible evidence, or it wasn't or a foundation hadn't been laid for what he was trying to impeach him with. In other words, you can't and sometimes too, if the statement that he was trying to impeach him with wasn't an inconsistent statement potentially, then it could still be considered hearsay and it can't come before the jury. So that's what, at least what the state was trying to say was being done. But then, of course, the judge obviously overruled him. So Elizabeth Caudill says, "Is there any updates on Ty?" I guess that's a great way to end the things. Next, yeah, that would be a good next podcast potentially. Yep. But yeah, on Ty right now, he is awaiting. Well, he is. I hope. I have not talked to him since the last aired conversation, but I hope he's preparing a response, because there is a response from the state. It was actually prepared by the state attorney general herself to the writ of prohibition in the attempt to get rid of Judge Morgan. And what the state's response was that essentially he was that Ty has made an improper argument or made an improper motion because he's attempting to ask for the judge's removal based solely on a disagreement with a ruling, which you're not allowed to do. Obviously, if you disagree with a judge, if that was
based on bias.
Well, it is, but this is why. But essentially, well, what Ty has argued, at least what's come through, and again, this is, they have to come up with some sort of response. But essentially, what Ty has tried to say is look, I disagree. He ruled again. What he's been basically saying is the judge ruled that I had to go through the prosecutor. The judge ruled that I had to. So what Ty has to zero this in on is say, listen, and again, that ruling will be appealed later. Mm-hmm. So you can't, again, on that basis, that can't be the basis. So what he has to say is it's the totality of the way the judge is treating him. It's the fact that the judge, it's not about the ruling. It's about the fact that he was denied due process he's been denied due process in the sense that he hasn't been able
for the bond,
correct. And he hasn't been given that. But the problem is the judge himself is not necessarily the one that's responsible for that. So it is kind of a dicey situation, but it's more of
who puts the bench warrant down then?
Well, no, what I mean is, the bench warrant was okay, but it's up to Ty again. And the response to all of this is going to be Ty didn't file the timely documents in response. But Ty's going to say, I didn't do that because I didn't have an arrest warrant. Well, he still could have filed it, but he didn't need the arrest warrant to file it. I mean, that would have been to do a thorough way, but he could have said, I contest the bond because I did this, I did this, I did this. I think that in the end, I think that it's going to probably, all of this is going to get thrown back to Judge Morgan's court, unless Judge Morgan just says, I want out of the case, and he leaves the case. Because unfortunately, this is why Ty needs a lawyer at the end of the day. Because yes, there are things being done that are biased, but you can't just say I did, but they are being done inside rulings, which is protected. Yeah. So then you have to go and say, well, or is what the judge is doing, as far as what he should be doing is filing an appeal or attempting to file an appeal based on the ruling that this judge entered, or whatever order that he entered, and saying this is unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And file an emergency writ and say this is such an egregious ruling, it's affecting my ability to go forward, as opposed to saying, well, I'm disagreeing with this judge because in his rulings, but he needs to say, hey, this judge's behavior based on his off the court, like the things he's saying in court. Okay.
What about the $3.1 million bond being so inappropriate?
Well, again, that's why Ty should have asked for a hearing on that. And again, the judge never, Ty has not filed the motion. See, this is the problem. Ty never filed the motion to say, I need a hearing to contest this. He should have filed a motion a long time ago contesting his bond.
Putting out fires, isn't he?
Well, no. What he did is he gave it up because he waived it and said, I'm not going to contest. I'm not contesting the bond issue. So he gives up all those issues.
It seems to be like he's fighting civil battles and this battle and that battle and that battle instead of just I think can you not do that?
Well, here's the issue that Ty's got to understand, and this is the concern I had from a long time ago. essentially, and my dad taught me this, until you file a motion, until you make it an issue, you don't have an issue.
Yep.
So all of these things, in other words, and then when you don't do something, failure to do something is waiving.
Yep.
So normally, if your attorney
Not on the
failed
record.
to do it, you would have the protection. One of the reasons why you always bring an attorney in, okay, is because if the attorney fails to do something at some level, at some spot, you're going to hold them accountable. It might not be on the direct appeal. It might be on a habeas corpus for ineffective assistance of counsel. But when you represent yourself, you waive the ineffective assistance of counsel argument because it's already understood you're going to be ineffective. You're not a lawyer. But if you decide, I'm not hiring a lawyer, and you can't show that you were somehow forced into that position against your will, which is what Sarah Boone was kind of saying, and that's why that prosecution was relieved as hell when James Owens came in, because the judge forced her there. Now, the judge felt like he had given her enough attorneys and said, we needed to be here, but eventually she got the attorney. Eventually she followed the attorney's guidance, and eventually they had a trial. But with Ty, he's waived any ineffective assistance of counsel arguments, period. End of story. There is none.
Do you think, getting back to Sarah Boone, the likelihood percentage-wise of an appeal?
Well, she's got several potential appealable issues that
there will be one, yes?
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be an appeal, yes, because there were several, and I'm trying to think. There was one that was sticking out to me, and it slipped my mind. But there's one that absolutely. I know what it was. It was the expert that.
Yes.
I mean that's an appealable issue. That's why. Look, what you saw going on out of the jury. That's why you heard the prosecutor get up and make basically a whole argument, and he goes on the record. The judge goes on the record. That's good lawyering, because what they're doing is they're making a record for the anticipated appeal that will come if she gets convicted. And again, they're going to appeal it. I mean, they're going to 100% appeal it. Now, do I think an appeals court's going to intervene? I don't know. But I think that it'll be interesting, to see how they handle it.
A little clip of that rebuttal.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
I think this is the one. Oh, how did that? See, I don't know how to work this shit. I've got you up. Where did we go? I'm not in the right screen, am I? Okay. Now do I add it to stage? Is that better? That'll do. All right, let's have a look. I think this is the one.
Charge her with second-degree murder, then why did they need to have an additional evaluation 5 years down the track? Just, I'm a bit.
Come on.
And yeah, of course, she's going to have the complete opposite.
Just her facial expressions.
Diagnosis and evaluation.
How many lemons has she been sucking?
Otherwise, she wouldn't be here. She has got a pearl necklace on, though.
Oh. Don't mind my commentary. Look at it.
I wonder what she's thinking about. She looks really impressed to be there. That wants to wear now. Dear, I'm terrible. I'm going.
Members of the jury, thank you so much for your patience. I have a matter I have to discuss with counsel outside of y'all's. The delays
Started, she started talking about.
Oh, he argues the issue there, but it was
I said on line 30.
I think I've loaded the wrong one.
Which is
while Madam Court Reporter is able to provide.
Ignore that. I loaded the wrong one. I thought I'd had the 2-minute one. Sorry. When Owens went back to her in his last argument, and the way that she answered him and then looked at the jury and was like, I thought was just rude. But all right, so appeal on her, and what other grounds do you think?
Well, I think that's going to be that's the one that stands out in my head, but there's probably others too because I mean, well, there's going to be others. I mean, there's the ruling. Well, I guess the judge did allow battered spouse to come in, but I think that's a big one. I think that
James isn't going to represent her. Owens isn't.
probably not because
Yeah, he said he
she'll get
wasn't.
a. Oh, he did. Oh, he said he wasn't.
Yep, in the post interview, straight out of court.
What did he
No.
say? What did he say? He said what?
Yeah, no, he wouldn't be representing her
On appeal.
for the appeal, but I think he was going to be there for the sentencing.
Well, yeah, he has to see
Yeah.
that through because that's the sentencing is connected to the trial itself. So
Yeah.
I don't think they would let him off the case at this point. But no, I mean, I would imagine he's not going to do an appeal for free. Can you imagine? Like, that would be for him to do that with no cost, no charge, nothing. That would be unbelievable. Plus, not to mention that he knows that probably she's not going to want him involved because she's going to look at the end of the day, she's going to go after him in the end.
Well,
But
she can't. She's on record saying that she's absolutely.
that judge was so careful to lock down the
Absolutely,
record.
wasn't he?
Well, but
Yeah.
trust me, it's not going to stop
Had to
her
be.
because she will get. That's. I mean,
alternates. I mean, that just tells you everything, doesn't it?
yeah, well, yeah, they wanted to make sure that case was happening, hell or high water, because they had her and they did not want to have to go back and do this all over again.
No. Hurricanes.
I mean, they did hurricanes be damned. They did not
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
I think that that was.
So, do you think justice was actually served?
Do I think justice was served in this case? Absolutely. I think she got her fair trial. I think she. Yes, absolutely. I think it was served. I mean, I think that she got an attorney in the end. She got a chance to make her case. This is a case where, listen, she made a horrible decision. I can't imagine being her processing this whole thing, especially with the way she is as a human. She just cannot at all deal with herself doing anything wrong, which is why you saw that literally on live time during the police interrogation, where the idea that she did this or was going to be held accountable for something like this was like she'd spent her whole life avoiding any type of responsibility. And now the police were coming to hold her responsible. And she'd always had an excuse. And now it was like, oh my God, you're going to charge me? Like, this can't be happening. Like, but it was a mistake. Like I didn't you can't really think like, what do you mean? Like, I don't want, it was just a complete failure to even comprehend that she was going to be held accountable in this instance. And, I think that, I think it's a situation where, the justice system worked here, that she got her day in court.
Yeah, she did.
And she got to put on the defense she wanted and she agreed with. And listen, I think she made a huge mistake going to trial, but she gets to live with that because that was her decision to do it. And, it was one of those things where I guess she really believed that when the jury saw all the stuff they were going to present, she really believed for some reason that.
That's why I was surprised, because I was the confidence that they had that she'd turned down this plea and they were going to trial and that this battered spouse.
Well, listen, my understanding was that James Owen, of course, remember, a defense attorney cannot make his client take a plea.
No.
But my understanding was
he was pushing it uphill all the way.
That he wanted her to take the plea, and she flat out was like, no way, I will never plead. We have too good of a defense, and I want to go to trial. And of course, that's, you're allowed to do that. But at your own peril, and it was at her own peril. But she just was too narcissistic to ever think she could plead guilty to something, because it would have to mean she admitted she did something wrong.
Correct. And
she's unable to do that. And that's what I think.
The lack of empathy too, the expression and emotion.
Well, here's the thing that I thought was really bad was she never cried on the stand.
No, not even watching the suitcase video. Nothing. No emotion.
Like, it was as if like George did this,
Yep.
George did this. I'm sure in her mind, it's like George messed up my life. Like if George never gets in that suitcase and wants to play hide and go, it was another night. I mean, I want to go to bed. He wants to play around, and he gets in that stupid suitcase, and and to her, it was like just unfathomable to her that she could even think that she did wrong. When reality was, I think if she would have been up there crying and saying, "This is terrible.
Yep.
This is
Oh,
such
I
a
felt
horrible
so bad when
situation.
I found him and I didn't know what to do. And
Like I didn't intend this. When I realized what happened, but I was so scared for my life. I was so scared of him. I
humanize
lived.
someone.
Well, that's what I'm saying, Jody. That's why I said she was not.
No.
She was not humanized in any way, shape, or form from the standpoint of the jury would not have looked at her and connected in that way. They would have looked at her like she was this disconnected individual who just didn't care. She just didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And she only cared about herself. Even though this man lost his life. I mean, can you listen? It's unthinkable what he went through in that suitcase.
Yep.
Unthinkable.
Yep.
Like to die the way he did, because it was the way he was positioned in the air.
It was very slow.
Very slow. Very slow. In that case, that suitcase had to be sealed. See, here's the thing everybody's got to remember, right? When they got to the scene, she'd already opened the suitcase.
Yeah.
So anything about whether the suitcase was open or not, and it appears in those videos, that suitcase was sealed. I did not see holes. I didn't see hands. Look, I think that while I believe, yes, there are cases where we believe that the woman, an abused woman, would deserve a not guilty verdict. I think Sarah Boone was taking advantage of that.
Yep.
And I think she was trying to make a defense
she's
out
done
of
that
it.
all her life, Steve.
Absolutely. And I think James Owens did a heck of a job for preparing for 3 weeks. And I mean, I would love for James Owens' next project to be Ty Tucker. So
wonder if we do an interview.
He probably listen. I would say he would, and the reason why I would say that is because he wasn't getting paid. So I
meant here with us.
No. I know that, but he's doing it for publicity. So if we could show him that, we would put him in front of people. That's what I'm saying. He didn't do this because he's planning to. He's 63 years old. He ain't retiring from the standpoint of he did this because, as my dad understood, and my dad would always say, I would take a case that would be in the papers, and my dad lost cases and he won cases. But reality is, James Owens' name is now known, right? But you get it. But he's now known as a fighter. He fought for his clients. He took this case to trial in 3 weeks. I thought he was a very competent attorney. I thought he did a heck of a job given the level of preparation that he had. So to me, this guy deserves to have some business coming his way. Now, whether or not he would take on the Ty Tucker case again, because it would be another pro se adventure, but that's a case he would win. And that's
chat to him.
I think, I thought about that, but I know the guy's got to be. He threw his heart and soul into this case, so I know the man's probably got to get back. He's got to get back to his paying clients, no question about that. But the Ty Tucker case is easy pickings. He would absolutely win that case, hands down, in my opinion, with no problem. He could put John Travis Johnson on the stand, but now dealing with Ty Tucker and this is the part that everyone has to understand, he's not a very good client at times because he has his own thought process on what he wants done, and and he thinks he can do it himself. So I don't believe there will ever be an attorney brought into Ty Tucker's case because I don't think he will allow it.
He did say he would think about it if he got moved to Miami-Dade.
Jody, he will not accept a strategy that isn't his own.
Yeah.
And that's why he's in this. Listen, my understanding was that his attorneys in the first place were willing to do the trial for no cost. I mean, that was one of the things I was told by him, and then it changed and said no. Now they wanted X amount of dollars. My belief is that they had a contrast in how they wanted it. He wants all of the stuff to come in that doesn't belong, because again, a trial is not about that. The defense doesn't bring stuff in. The defense gets a chance to rebut what the state has brought in. And the state, by keeping
The
certain
burden's on them.
Well, correct. And because the state has kept certain things out, certain things don't get to come in. That's why he doesn't understand it when the judge says, well, all of that evidence that you're saying was tampered with is inadmissible. It's because the state's not
by the state.
That's how the state gets around it.
I get it now.
And remember, testimony is evidence. So they can go to trial on John Travis Johnson's testimony alone. And if the jury believes him beyond a reasonable doubt, but testimony is evidence. Evidence is not just DNA on a cup. Okay.
What about jailhouse phone calls?
Or jailhouse phone calls. It's
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Well, I tried to go. I contacted the state, and DeSantis's office is not it. You have to go.
Someone on it. It's all right.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
It's in hand.
Oh, good. Okay, I was going to say you have to go through, I think, the jail, and I wasn't sure how to get through that process.
No, I haven't.
And then, honestly, I didn't want to have to go give.
I know people.
Well, good, because my concern was I didn't want to go down there and give all my personal information to the Monroe County Jail, and then they know who, because they're a
different place you have to go to. It's
it is okay.
Yeah, I think
well, hopefully once you're successful, share that with me, because I've always wanted to go down
both on both counts.
Because I've always wondered just how I've seen other people do it, and I'm like, is it expensive? Because I know they said
that's what I'm waiting on.
Okay. I heard
I don't know how many there are and what each is going to be, but I can also get arrest information too if you wanted it.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I was going to say in Florida you can get you can even get discovery files too. Like you can get everything in Florida. Now, where
cocaine from a helicopter.
What's that? Yeah. Yeah. So is it a totally different? I know it's not the government, because I tried to send in the thing to DeSantis's office and they said wrong department. Is it the local sheriff that we have to go through for this?
No, it was a government department. It was I can't remember who it was, but I've actually got a friend who used to do FOIA requests as a living, and she's done hundreds of them.
Okay.
And yeah, she's on it.
So she was able to help you do that or direct you to work.
She's in the process of doing it for me now, yes.
Awesome.
I'm just waiting on how much.
Well, it would be interesting to hear those calls, I will tell you.
And hopefully that should be all done.
Well, that was the other thing, too, is they wanted, when I went to the jail, to put in the request through the jail, you have to have the specific dates of the phone calls that you want. And I was like, they wouldn't let me just do a range, or at least that's what it appeared. And I was like, well, I don't know what the dates are. So I don't want to go inquire and then I guess I could put in all the dates, but then they were saying like the inquire.
You have to get a request on the list of them first, and then select your.
And then
that's right. Yeah.
Oh, is that the process? You're saying get a list of the jail calls and then select the calls you want. Well, that's the problem. I don't know which ones would be which. So that was the other issue. So I thought, well, I don't know what to do here. But hey, listen, sounds like you have a professional involved. So that's good.
So we'll keep that. Hopefully that should all have come to fruition by the next podcast, which is exactly one fortnight from today.
Okay.
Same time, same place, 9th of November, right here.
Yes. Yeah.
So the next time, my Tucker update.
Yeah, we could do a Tucker update. I think we also we'll talk about the Ferris case too, because that will have come to pass. And that will be possibly having had a verdict that week before, right before we do the podcast, because it's supposed to be ending next week, and then jury deliberations are going to run into the following week. So
while you're watching those trials, ladies and gents, write down your questions, any queries, anything that you don't understand.
And come on into.
We'll do our best to
give you a full breakdown.
Amuse you, if nothing else.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Jody. Absolutely.
For the record.
Yeah. All right.
Come what may.
Yes, absolutely.
Enjoy.
For the record, come on in. Stories that make your head spin. For the record, come what may. Listen in and have your say. Each and every case and file, each and every court and trial. Listen to our voices true. Each one